decided he decided to devote his life to peace and humanitarian things. So he just feeds children. He works with them on getting laptops. It's just he brings socks to the homeless, and he's been Santa Claus, and he speaks to the Washington School Personnel Association. He wrote them and talked about peace and some stuff. So he's kind of like a Tacoma celebrity, but he's also known throughout the world. So I introduced to you Kwabi, and he is going to speak. His title is On a Mission for Peace. So we're welcome to Kwabi.
Thank you. And thank you guys for having me so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm good now. I was having some technical difficulties, but I'm so glad I'm able to be here tonight. Yeah, a mission for peace. And I'm going to start from the top about how this all got started and how my work got started. And it is an amazing journey. It's wild how it came together. It actually came full circle just this weekend, and I'll get on that in a minute. When I first started doing my peace work was when I was in grad school. I was in grad school, and I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So as many kids and young folks are navigating the spaces of life early on, you kind of just are told what to do. You know, you go to school. Someone at some point was like, you need to go to college. And then at some point, I was told I needed to go to grad school, but I really didn't know why I was doing these things. I was just going through the motions of life. But at one point in grad school, I felt that very unfulfilled. I was in school for business, and I was completely surrounded by individuals who are just concerned on how to make money, which money's great. It's a way you can utilize it to create things or to, make your life better. But in that space around people who are solely concerned of how to make money, I felt lost. So I did something that a lot of people don't do in our current day and age. A lot of young folks don't do. And that's reaching out to an elder in the community for guidance. So I think younger individuals, they may go to their parents, right? Or maybe, a relative, which is great. You should do those things. But to reach out to someone else who's not related to you at all and get their opinion is very important. Someone you can call a mentor. So I reached out to Dr. Peter Bacho. He's a professor at the Evergreen State College Tacoma campus. And he had helped me when I was in my undergrad and getting my head on straight because I wasn't getting the grades I needed to, but he really helped guide me in that area. So I went to Dr. Bacho's office. I told him that I was feeling unfulfilled, and I'm complaining. I'm saying all these things are happening to me. I'm not feeling good. He tells me to calm down and be quiet. And he said, you need to stop asking yourself, Kwabi, what do you want to be? And start asking yourself, who do you want to be? And this is the first time I've ever thought about a question like this. So instead of asking myself, do I want to be a lawyer? Do I want to be a doctor? Forget that. What are the principles I want to embody as a human being? Something that we don't ask ourselves often. Who do I want to be, right? So I took some time by myself and really thought about this concept. And I thought at my core, the thing I love the absolute most out of anything is seeing different people from different walks of life, races, colors, and creeds coming together. Even thinking about the concept, I get goosebumps thinking about it because to me, that's what we're moving towards. The work of inner peace is eventually trying to get us to interpersonal peace, which is this concept of getting to a space where we can get along. Not in spite of our differences, but in respect to our differences. There's a difference. So in spite says, you're doing what you're doing, I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's fine. We can be separate and it's fine. As long as, I don't care what you're doing. But in respect to means that I learn about someone else, their walk of life, their way of being, and they learn about me and then we can coexist. And I love that concept of peace. So I learned that I wanted to be involved in it. And I immediately started doing research, trying to figure out who was doing this sort of work around the world. And of course, we know of Martin Luther King and Gandhi, individuals who did this sort of work from a historical context. And the work is still, relevant today, obviously. But I was curious to see who's doing the peace work in, the 2000s. And so I came across this guy named, first I came across this guy named Brian Haw. And I don't know if you guys have heard of him. I've spoken about him in a lot of my speaking engagements. But if you haven't heard of Brian, you need to look him up. He's absolutely brilliant. And he was a peace campaigner from London, England. And he camped outside of Parliament Square for 11 years, promoting love and peace and basically goodwill towards men, everyone. And he ended up dying out there on the pavement in London. And I fell in love with this guy's concept that we are equal based off our humanity. So Brian was out there for 11 years with these posters, these peace posters. And I thought, well, I'm not going to be outside for 11 years. But what I can do is I can go to my park on the weekends. So on Saturday, I made these. I made these posters. One said love, peace, and justice for all. The other one said war is not the answer, say no to violence. And I'd go to Wright Park on Saturday mornings. It's a local park here in Tacoma. And I would just talk to people about peace. And so basically, I would just be out there and people would come up to me and they'd ask if I'm selling anything.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not selling anything. I want to have a conversation with you. And they're like, oh, is this religious? And I'm like, no, it's not. We're just talking about peace. And at first they were sort of off put by it, but I explained it to them this way. So if you ask anyone on the street what they want out of life, peace is going to be in the top 3 things, usually. So why don't we talk about it more? I mean, we talk about our favorite TV show. We talk about our favorite movie, our favorite food, but we don't talk about peace, something that's so important. So as we're having these conversations at Wright Park every Saturday, I become like this guy at the park. People are talking about it. They bring in their families and their friends, and this is sort of the atmosphere I'm bringing to Wright Park every Saturday. And I was doing that for a while, a couple months, and then I was attacked at the park. So someone who was mentally ill saw me, triggered something in their mind, and they attacked me. And because of this, when I went back the next Saturday, I was sort of paranoid. I didn't know if this guy was going to come back, and it was a bad instance, but it was good in that it compelled me to walk. So I started walking around the park with my posters, talking to people, and then I started walking around Tacoma, and then I walked in Seattle, then Portland, then Vancouver, BC, and then in San Francisco, talking to people about peace, asking what does peace mean to everyday people. And then when I had a friend who was stationed in the Netherlands, and he told me to bring my posters to Europe. So I took my posters and went to Europe and traveled throughout different cities in Europe, talking to people about peace. And then I came back home and I thought, okay, well, that was a great experience. What now, right? Always trying to figure out what's next. And so I came across this gentleman. I'm always doing research as well. And I come across a gentleman named A.B. Nathan. Now, I don't know if you guys have heard of A.B. Nathan, but he's absolutely amazing as well. And he was a humanitarian from Israel and also a pilot. And so he had an airplane he called the Peace One, and he flew it from Tel Aviv all the way to Egypt to promote better relations between Arabs and Jews. And he also had a peace ship that he had in the Mediterranean Sea. And it was a radio station. So he'd invite people all across the world to come to his ship and to talk about peace and dialogue. And he was also good friends with John Lennon. A.B. Nathan's great. So I fell in love with this guy's concept as well. And I thought I wanted to be a peace pilot. So in 2017, 18, I started taking flight lessons, still in grad school, mind you. So I had no money. So I took about 6 lessons and I couldn't do any more. It cleaned me out. But I thought, well, if I can't do the pilot thing now, I can at least have some sort of vehicle for peace. And that's when I decided to use my income tax money and buy this thing called the Peace Bus. And I wanted the vehicle to be sort of interesting, right? It would be not your ordinary vehicle, so that people would look at it and they'd see it and hopefully be inspired to do something peaceful, or maybe to look up more about the peace movement, but to do something for peace. And so I bought the vehicle for $3,200. It looked like a tin can at first, didn't look really appealing. And then I got it painted blue. There's an activist, I'm sure you guys know of her, called Peace Pilgrim. And so Peace Pilgrim walked the United States back and forth. She said she would keep on walking till the world came together in peace. And for some reason, I don't remember. If someone remembers, please let me know. In an interview, she stated that the color of peace was blue. But I don't remember why she said it. But no matter why, I just made sure that the Peace Bus was blue because of her. And I put the Peace Bus on the side and started driving it around town, right? Just driving this Peace Bus around town, and to see the faces of people light up, and just to see, something different out on the street for peace was really cool. And I never thought that it would extend to humanitarian aid till I realized in the bus there's a space where there's nothing. There's supposed to be seats, but there's nothing there. So I thought, well, if I'm going to talk about peace and I'm going to drive peace, it makes sense to put peace into action. And that's when I started thinking of doing humanitarian aid, using my vehicle for that endeavor. And we think of humanitarian aid of being, in places that are third world countries, like places like in areas in Southeast Asia and parts of Africa, which that is humanitarian aid. But people need help right here in Tacoma and in the U.S. I started doing sock drives. Yeah, nothing too big. I started doing sock drives and driving my bus around, giving out socks to people on the street. And so this is 2019. In the beginning of 2019, there was a lot going on about the immigration crisis happening. And I've told you, some of you guys already about this story, but I decided I wanted to take my baby blue vehicle, the Peace Bus, and take it all the way down through California to the border of Mexico to interview Border Patrol agents about the immigration crisis, which is absolutely nuts. It's absolutely nuts to think that I could do that, but I'm stubborn, and I said I was going to do it. So I announced on social media I was going to be doing this trip, and after a while, I realized funds were coming in, and we were going to be able to do this major trip, and not only take the bus to the border of Mexico, but to drop off socks and blankets to people living on the street. So this was the whole campaign. And in August of 2019, me and a few friends, we took the Peace Bus and we went all the way down. Who can see the transcript? I'm reading on the bottom. Okay. But yeah, so we took the bus all the way down and stopped in major cities, and we stayed with host families, right? We didn't stay in hotels. We stayed with people who were inspired about the mission. We just stayed with them, and people we didn't know at all. And we had very good conversations with these strangers, learning about what they perceive peace to be. And I would give my, 2 cents, and we'd have good conversations in that way. And I made it to LA. And once I was in LA, I had a friend told me to call San Diego Border Patrol and ask if we could interview them, because I had called before and they told me that I couldn't because they didn't even know who I was. I wasn't even a news station. But I decided to call again, and we got on the phone with them, and they said no again. We can't come and interview them. And before they hung up, they asked me, they were intrigued about the Peace Bus. What was it? So I sent them a photo of it. And about an hour later, they called back and they said, well, the guys here at the station want to see the bus. So the next day, we drove down to the Border Patrol headquarters, and a couple of the officers come out and they're looking around. They don't even see me. They just pass me. They're like, where's the bus at? And they look at the bus and they're just in wonder. They're just like, this is a really cool vehicle. Why'd you guys come down here? And I was like, we came to interview you guys about the crisis. And they were kind of, skeptical about it. And they were like, well, you can't interview us, but we'll let you ride on patrol with us. So we get in their patrol car and we're on the border of Mexico. I'm looking, I'm literally seeing Mexico, and there's, a gate there. And just through cordial conversation and being kind, I asked them if I could interview them, and they said, okay. And they let me film it and ask them a ton of questions about what was going on there. And I was very respectful. They were respectful towards us. And we learned a lot of things that were going on that wasn't in the media. One main one being that the officers needed humanitarian aid, that a lot of people coming up from the border from Mexico to the US were coming without clothes. They were coming up without food to eat or water to drink, and how a major problem that they were having is not having the supplies to aid them. I never once heard that on the news, ever once having that discussion on the news. So we got all this information, and then we put it up on social media. And when I got back to Washington, that was like the first time I started getting on the news with these humanitarian campaigns that I was doing. And I started using that publicity to go to schools and talk to students about peace and nonviolence. I wish I had it with me, but I have this thing called the peace ball. And on every panel, it's a beach ball. It's a beach ball, but it's actually the peace ball. And on every panel, there's a question to do with peace, right? So I would take it to a school, we pass it around the classroom, and we start talking about peace and nonviolence and all these sort of things. And then eventually we're having a conversation, a natural conversation about the topic. And then this is still 2019. Going into 2020, we all know what happened. COVID hit, and everything was sort of coming to a halt at that time. But peace doesn't come to a halt, as we all know. Peace is always something we can do, always. So I thought, since a lot of the schools in Tacoma were shutting down, and a lot of our students rely on the schools for breakfast and for lunch, that I needed to do something to help the children in this way. Now, there was a lot of areas in Tacoma where kids could go or families could go and get lunch, designated areas. But what about the kids and the families that don't drive, right? So I had an idea of using the bus to transport food to families in need. But I realized I'm not like a restaurant. I don't have the credentials to transport like spaghetti, right? Or, filet mignon or something like that. But I can transport non-perishable items. I found a loophole. So I could transfer cereal. And that's when I started the Peace Bus Breakfast Fund, transporting cereal to families in need. All they needed to do was text me. And between the milkman hours of 7 a.m. and about 10 to 11 a.m., did I say that right? 7 a.m. to that time, I would be delivering breakfast cereal. And I did this for from March to about July. I was doing this about every morning. I would be going out and delivering breakfast cereal. And I got a good lay of the land of Tacoma, right? So I'm driving around everywhere in Tacoma.
Face big, so
What's up?
So she's talking too much. This is glass for you.
Oh. I guess I'll keep on going. If you guys can hear me, that is. So from about March to July, and I got a good understanding of what Tacoma looked like. There's like areas that are quite affluent, of course, and then there's areas that look like a third world country. But I would still be in areas where you would think people would be good and not need food. But this, disparity is interesting in that way. It doesn't have one face. When people think of people who need food, they may think of someone with tattered clothes on the corner, and people like that need food. But there were areas in Tacoma that looked quite nice, and people there were struggling, needing food. And this is when I learned how, disparity doesn't have one face to it, or one color, one shade, or. And so after that, so this is in July of 2020. We're still going through COVID. I was on the news again on King 5 News to talk about when George Floyd was killed. And they had reached out to me to give my thoughts about police reform. And I really wasn't comfortable with it at first. I thought I wasn't going to do it. But my brother actually influenced me and told me that I needed to talk about it. And I got in there and gave my, thoughts and ideas about police reform. we'll get on that maybe another time. But after that, we're getting into the fall of 2020, and I'm realizing that we're in a very interesting time in history, being that a lot of places are closing down, businesses are closing down, people are out of work, people are sort of in this depression state because of COVID. People are in their houses. It's a very depressing time, just to be real. And I thought that there must be something that can be done to help people, help families, but also bring some cheeriness to this dampering time that we have. And I thought of being Santa Claus for the city of Tacoma. And this is when I launched the campaign, Santa's Sleigh. So I invited all the kids in the greater Tacoma area. So Tacoma, Lakewood, Parkland, and of course, Tacoma. Any kid could send me a letter about what they've done with their families and friends for love and peace. And they could ask me for a gift as long as it was $50 and under, and I'd get it for them. So I got hundreds of letters in the mail, hundreds of letters. And one by one, I'd read them all. And then I would go on Amazon or websites and get the exact present that they wanted, right? And on Christmas Eve, I had a few friends as elves and myself as Santa Claus. I put reindeer on top of the Peace Bus, and we drove around Tacoma. We started at 4 p.m. and ended at 4 a.m. delivering hundreds of gifts. And it was out of all the campaigns I've ever done, that was probably the most difficult. But it was very rewarding, very rewarding. There was a girl who wanted a hamster. So I showed up at her doorstep with a hamster, and that was a really cool moment. There was also a girl who wanted a pan, like a cooking pan, like a real one, right? So in my mind, I'm trying to think, why does this girl want a pan? Like, what is she gonna do with it? But I showed up at her doorstep. She was one of the last stops. So it's like 3 a.m. in the morning. All the lights are on in the house. And I'm like, what? Why are they? They were up right now? And before I can even get to the door, her dad opens the door. He's like, come on in, come on in. And it was an Indian family. And they had said that they have an Indian restaurant and how they're going through difficult times right now because of COVID. And their daughter, who is 5, all she wants to do is be a chef at their restaurant. She goes around in the restaurant, acts like she's cooking, but she's not. And she was the one who wanted the pan. So I give her the pan and she opens it up and she's looking at the pan and she goes in the kitchen and tries cooking something. And her whole family was there. And it was just a beautiful moment to be a part of that. And the more moments like that, it's just more and more inspiration to do more peaceful work. And after Santa's Sleigh, so this is getting into 2021. Yeah. At that time, politics, I mean, there still are very polarized, but at that time, I mean, there was no mistake that our country was severely divided. And again, my mind starts running around of what I could do. And I'm thinking that I want to spread peace again, but to plant seeds of peace, right? But what does that mean? Planting seeds of peace. This is the sort of the idea was running through my brain. How can I plant seeds of peace? I had a dream about Johnny Appleseed, and in the sense of he planted apple seeds in the Midwest, and now consequently there's tons of apple trees in the Midwest. How can we do the same thing for peace? And I thought of books, right? A kid reads a book, or anyone reads a book rather, and they may be inspired to get involved with whatever that book is talking about. So I launched this campaign called Manifest Humanity. In this campaign, I had a peace reading list comprised of 40 books that I had personally read myself that I felt involved this concept of peace, empowerment, humanizing those who are seldom humanized. So talking about individuals who are experiencing poverty, those who have been either incarcerated or have had some sort of major traumatic instance happen to them. They're people too, right? And then also empowering the youth who may not feel that they can accomplish their dreams, to let them know that they can. So this is the 40 books that I had, and started raising funds to get out hundreds of these books, right? And then in August, the trip would be driving from Washington State all the way to DC and stopping in major cities along the way and delivering these books to the youth from college age all the way to the years to like a 5-year-old kid, right? And it actually happened. It actually happened. So in August, I took my bus and an auto transport and a large truck filled with hundreds and hundreds of books. It was the wildest thing ever. And it was me, my assistant, and a documentarian, and we headed out on the trip of a lifetime, stopping in Boise. Stopped in Boise, then went to Salt Lake City, and went to Colorado Springs and Denver. From there to St. Louis. From St. Louis to Louisville, Kentucky. Well, we also stayed in Kansas City. Went to Detroit, and went to Toledo, Ohio, and just Pittsburgh, New York, Philadelphia, and DC. Finally, DC, giving out hundreds of books, and I did some speeches as well. And I tried to meet with President Biden. I wrote him a letter about the major inhibitors of peace, things that I felt that if they continue to be promoted, I'd say that we can't create a peaceful society. And these three things being poverty, racism, and lack of quality education for our children. It makes no sense that we would have one town, for example, and have one part of town where kids are less educated than another part of town when the solutions we desperately need are embedded in any child anywhere. So it behooves us as a society to make sure that our kids are across the board educated, well educated, right? I don't know if Biden got the letter. Maybe he didn't get it. I don't know. But I didn't end up meeting with him. But when I got to DC, I meet an activist by the name of Filippo. And Filippo had been camping outside of the White House for 30 years, he claims, 30 years, right? So he's in this hut. And all in the hut has all these images of peace and love. And I show up to his hut, and there's a little curtain there, so I don't knock on it, but I'm like, hey, Filippo. And he comes out, and he calls me brother. I'm wearing a peace sign emblem on my shirt, and he calls me brother, and we have a conversation about what peaceful progress could look like. And he had a cell phone, and so I added him on Instagram, and he added me back, and he said the coolest thing he told me, that he was friends with Brian. Him and Brian Hall, who I talked about earlier, were pen pals, and he knew of him personally. So that was really cool to learn. And then when I got back home to Washington, I kind of took the year to sort of figure out what I wanted to do next. I did a few campaigns here and there, always doing sock drives and things like that. And then I decided I wanted to get involved with hunger. So I thought of a campaign called Everyone Eats. Everyone Eats. And the idea would be that there would be a restaurant every day of the week where anyone, young or old, could eat for free. But I also realized how in our society, it's a very strange thing that once you turn 18, people kind of just don't care about you as much, right? Mm-hmm. Kids, great. 18 and older, you're fending for yourself. So I realized that my campaign, at least for now, wouldn't be as successful if it was for everyone, and that I should just focus on the children in order to gain the steam that I needed in order to serve that population. So I decided it would be called Every Kid Eats, and that in Tacoma, there'd be a restaurant every day of the week where any kid 18 and under could eat for free. And so about 6 restaurants decided that they would team up with me and to do this campaign. And so last summer, 2022, I launched this campaign. From July 1st to September 1st, there were these restaurants where any kid could eat for free. And at first it was about 5, but as the summer progressed, we got about 9 restaurants on board, including there was the Grand Cinema, which isn't even a restaurant, but they decided to give out popcorn for free on certain days. Oh. And over 1,500 kids last summer, which was absolutely crazy. And the cool thing about it, I like to think that it was very interesting in the sense that it just took a few restaurants united, and we served over 1,500 kids. And there was no government involvement. There was some big corporation involvement. A few restaurants decided to work together. And we're doing the same thing this year. I'm launching it again this year because the impact was so big. And so starting July, I'm thinking it's going to be July 1st this year. A lot of the restaurants that were involved last year are going to be doing it again, and we're going to feed more kids this year. And the cool thing about the campaign, it's not every poor kid eats or every kid who is hungry eats. It's every kid eats. So you'd go to a restaurant on the day that they're participating in the campaign, and you couldn't tell the kids that were in poverty from the kids that weren't. They're all just eating together. It's how it should be, right? There was no stigma behind it. We're just here to eat, right? So the kid doesn't feel stigmatized at all. No one does. So that campaign was done. And then where am I at now? This is 2022, right? Yeah. And in the fall of 2022, that's when I decided I wanted to create a talk show. So to this point, I've been, doing humanitarian aid, which I love. That's who I am as a person, a humanitarian. That's what I love. But I thought, yes, putting peace into action is very important. It's the most important thing. But dialogue is very important too, right? So having peaceful conversations about tough topics is something that I wanted to get myself involved with. So I started a talk show called The Peace Bus, getting influencers, celebrities, and leaders, as well as everyday people, to have conversations about influential topics. Now, something like this has been done before in the sense of having politicians. They get together and talk about race. They get together and talk about poverty, right? But oftentimes they kind of have their own, they have like their own points to give, right? They're having a conversation. They're usually bickering with someone, and there's not a lot of leeway there. And so my idea was to get basketball players, get the artists, get the musician together to have these conversations in hopes that the young folks can see them and say that their favorite artist is talking about poverty. That opens the mind for them to think, well, I can talk about this and I can get involved and I can be utilized to help people that are in need. So I shot the pilot episode in October. It went great. It was fantastic. And then I pitched it to PBS. I had several meetings with PBS, and they went great. And basically, they said they were interested in syndication, putting it on TV, but they wanted to know my business plan and how often I could, do these episodes. They wanted me to do 10 episodes. So I'm up to the challenge. And as of now, I'm going to be filming 10 episodes of the Peace Bus talk show and honing in on problems and conversations that we need to have. So we filmed the second episode last week. It's Sunday now, last week at the Washington State History Museum. And that went really good. The conversation was about race and economics. And the next episode that we're going to have, hopefully in late August, it will be about gun violence in schools. We got to talk about it. It's huge. The epidemic of gun violence in this country is absolutely crazy. So I'm hoping to get teens and college students, as well as influencers and celebrity folks in the room to get their ideas of how we can go about dwindling this issue. So there's that, the talk show. And then I received the Tacoma Peace Prize, the youngest person to receive it, which is pretty cool. Usually it's given to someone who spent their entire lives doing peace work. And they decided to give it to me, which I was kind of scratching my head to it, like, really? But it's really cool. I feel like it's an investment. So they sent me to Oslo, Norway to attend the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony in December. And I words cannot describe how I felt in the ceremony. It's the only way to actually describe it. It's almost like a spiritual experience. You're in a room with tons of people with the common goal of creating a more peaceful world. Everyone in the room is geared towards this frequency of peace. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. The individual who received the Nobel Peace Prize, Ales Bialyatsky, is a Belarusian freedom fighter who is in prison right now, speaking out in regards to the war happening in Ukraine. So he wasn't able to be there to receive his award, but his wife was. She gave a very great speech about how we can all do something for peaceful progress. And it was beautiful. And while I was there in Norway, I got to go to Sweden, and I went to Ireland for a bit. And where else did we go? Went to Amsterdam, and I went to New York and gave a speech about my experience going to the Nobel Peace Prize ceremony, and came home. Yeah. And since then, it's been more and more humanitarian work. I did a campaign called Equip to Learn, focusing on high school seniors and going to various high schools in the area and giving away free laptops to high school seniors who need it, that are hopefully going to be going to college or trade school next year. And yeah, that's basically the gist of it. I never forgot the dream of being a peace pilot, and I am currently in flight school. I've done all my in-cockpit training. I can fly a plane. I can fly a plane. Now, the only thing I have left is the written test. And so I've been studying for that for the last couple of months. Between all the other stuff I'm doing, I take time to study. I even have my flashcards over there. Yeah. So I hope to get my license sometime this summer and start gearing up for the greatest flight in the history of humankind, the peace plane, and to fly for peace, raising awareness of the major inhibitors of peace. And once I do that, I can die and be happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm open for questions. I love questions. I'm trying to think of anything else that I might have missed.
I heard that you were going to teach a class on peace this summer.
Yes, that one. Yes. So I've always wanted to create a curriculum for peace. Now, I know of Paul K. Chappelle. Are you guys familiar with him? If you're not, you should check him out. He coins himself as a peace teacher. He teaches peace literacy. He's a professor of this thing called peace literacy, which encompasses inner peace, interpersonal peace, and diplomatic peace. He sort of separates them all. And very, very eloquent teacher on the aspect of peace. And I've created my own curriculum called Peace 101. It's 101 for a reason. I am not a seasoned scholar on the aspects of nonviolence or peace, but I know a little something. So I created a curriculum for high school, primarily high school, college, and middle school age. And I've been pitching this curriculum to schools, to colleges, and I was able to pitch it to Peace Community Center. So they bought it. And now I'm going to be teaching peace for the first time ever this summer in their academic program for summer for the kids. And I'll be teaching it to high schoolers. So it's basically, the curriculum is comprised of understanding the fundamentals of interpersonal peace, how we can show love and compassion towards each other, the art of listening. We give a little bit of historical context to people who have been leaders in peace, in the peace movement. And then we end the class by instructing the student on how they can volunteer at whatever a nonprofit they want to be involved with. So throughout the class, they're getting an understanding of how they want to be involved in the peace movement. And then at the end of the class, it's like, okay, I want to do this. I've already filled out basically sort of form that lets them know that, like, hey, I want to do A, B, C, and D, and this is how I can do it and get involved in the whole peace movement. So it's pretty cool.
I think so.
I'm excited about it. Yeah, it's the first time ever. And that will start June 30th.
Coming.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mary Martin.
Thank you. Thank you very, very, very much for devoting your life, your talents, your goals for peace. It's wonderful, wonderful inspiration. I can't help wondering, are you doing your own self-funding? You have a doctorate in business, right?
I have a master's.
You have
Yeah.
a master's degree in business. Are
Mhm.
you engaged? Is that your day job?
Right. That's a great question. It wasn't till last month. Last month, I decided to go full time. The reason, there's a couple of different reasons. One being I want to do more, and with my day job, I just wasn't able to do more, and it was becoming very tasking. Uh, I was also I was doing healthcare administration for the longest, for about a couple of years, and before that, I was a mental health counselor. But when I was doing healthcare administration, I decided I wanted to get more into the realm of nonprofit work.
Hmm.
So I left that to work at Peace Community Center, which is basically they do tutoring for youth. And they hired me as a donor engagement officer, knowing that I have a lot of connections in the area because of my peace bus work and my humanitarian work. But the problem with what I would have is I would go to these board meetings, or I'd go to, some sort of banquet, and people would be like, "Hey, you're the Peace Bus guy." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know, but I'm actually here for Peace Community Center." And they'd be like, "Okay, well, do we want to donate to you, but who are these people?" And it became kind of confusing, where I was like, "Okay, well, I'm not bringing in dollars for Peace Community Center because people can't differentiate my work from Peace Community Center." So I talked to my boss. I told her that we were having this issue, and she was like, "Oh, you need to go full time, Kwabi. You need to go full time. If you're in settings and people see you as doing this work and it's not us, you need to be going full time." So I decided to go full time, and I've been doing this for about a month. And it's been okay so far. We'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So when you fly, where are you going to fly to?
Right. The peace plane. The great question. I love aviation questions. So, um, I see the peace plane being a twofold sort of a mission. The first one is on my fingertips. It's coming very, very close, and that would be to have a small plane. Hope it's probably like a Cessna 172 or 152, and have it say the peace plane on the side. And I would invite people to fly with me, politicians, leaders, influencers, and everyday people, to have conversations in the air about peace and record them. So it'd sort of be like kind of like a radio station or a podcast, if you will, in the air. We're taking peace to the highest height and having conversations as we fly over the land. It's very interesting. I feel it's very symbolic as well. Because when you get up there in the sky, it's all one. You don't see the borders.
Mm-hmm.
We're in
Mm-hmm.
this district or that district. This is Tacoma. This is Seattle. We're just seeing land. And really, it's a testament to how things really are. So yeah, that's my hope for that phase of the mission. Ultimately, we'll see. I'm not going to count it out, but we'll see. But ultimately, I'd like to have a larger plane and to fly to different countries and meet with leaders and talk about peaceful progress with them, and to have this sort of peace plane be a symbolic gesture of how we can come together, and then hopefully use it to even distribute penicillin, or medicine that people need, or food that people need around the world, this sort of deal. So we'll see, but the first one definitely happening.
So the FOR has some people that work for peace also. Are you, I mean, the FOR was first started at the First World War, where there were pastors, they were going to a conference, and the war started while they were trying to talk it out so it wouldn't start.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided they would work for peace for the war. So it has been working against war, and they were also very influential in the 60s, for the race. They were friends of Martin Luther King Jr. and they they work for nonviolence,
Mm.
and I'm just thinking there are some people that I know that have been working separately, for things, and I was wondering about getting together with people.
Cool. Yeah, collaboration is a must when it comes to peace. Me, my thing is when I do collaborations, I love to see, how my effort or someone else's effort can work together. I guess I've been running things sort of on my own, and whoever like sees what I do and they want to support, they back it up however they can. I'm always open to collaboration though, so let's talk. Let's do it.
Okay.
Mhm.
I guess I would want to just tell you about some of those things, and I'll do that. Some of those people, I mean. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, cool. Let's do it.
Yeah, okay. I will. More questions?
Yeah.
Well,
Okay,
okay, go ahead.
I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious. We're facing a big climate crisis, and it could either push the world together towards peace or it could cause more wars. And I just wondered what you think about that. How can we, it's going to get messy. I mean, the scientists are telling us that. And, anyway, what's your opinion on that?
Right. Yeah, it is going to get messy. I'll tell you what I think we should do, and then I'll tell you what I think is going to happen. What I think we should do is we should, as much as possible, raise awareness of the climate crisis. Though some people are listening, we can't be silent in what's going on. We need to be as vocal as possible in raising awareness of what's going on. What I think is going to happen, there's going to be a major catastrophe that happens climate-wise. And it's interesting that the way maybe I'd say Americans work, I don't know about elsewhere, but how we run things is something will happen negatively and then we'll do something about it. And oftentimes that thing that's negative that happens will bind us together. It's kind of like a sports team, like a baseball team rather. A baseball team is at its absolute best when it's going against a worthy adversary, another team that's just as good, and it brings out all the talents, all the toughness of the team so that they can beat that other team. And I think that's what will probably happen with the climate crisis. We will get to a point where, hey, we're going to have to get together in order to do something about it. I don't think it's the reality has set in for enough Americans, enough people around the world to get to that level yet, but it will happen. And hopefully by the time that happens, it's not too late.
Kwabi, thank you very much for sharing with us today. You were talking about your experiences, talking with people at the border and talking with people traveling back east and wherever. What in particular things have you learned through firsthand encounters with people right on the front line, so to speak, that many people, perhaps most of us, have not experienced, and that you had not experienced before you really shared with these people and learned and just shared with them? What kind of things in particular have you learned about humanity and about yourself and humanity?
Yeah, it's good to always see you, David. Yeah. Yeah. When I was in the Netherlands for the first time, doing a peace campaign, when I first got into town, I was in a small town called Uden, right? So basically is the size of University Place area in the Tacoma area, very small town, right? Very rural. And when I got there, my best friend, he had to work. So he gave me the keys to his house and was like, just walk around. You'll love it. So I'm walking around Uden in the middle of the Netherlands, don't know where I'm at. My phone isn't working because I didn't do the, whatever I needed to do to make sure my phone was in service. So my phone's out of service and I got lost. So I'm walking through Uden, don't know where I'm at. And I see this older gentleman, he's walking towards me and he's smiling really hard, like smiling ear to ear. And he's has his hands up like this. And I'm like, what is he doing? I was kind of like, I'm a skeptic of it. I'm like, I don't know what he's doing. And as he gets closer to me, he wants to give me a hug. So I hug him and I'm kind of reluctant to do it, but I hug him and I'm trying to talk to him. I'm like, hey, I don't know where I'm at. I'm lost. He speaks Dutch. He can't understand what I'm saying. I don't know what he's saying, but he's very excited. And then there's a girl on a bike. She comes near me and I say, hey, I'm lost. So she gets off her bike and she speaks English. So I'm telling her, hey, I'm lost. I don't know where I'm at. And as she's trying to explain to me, give me directions, she can't because this guy's yelling. He's like happy and he's yelling. So she has to stop talking to me and she turns to him and she's like, talking with him and they're speaking Dutch and she starts to smile. And she turns to me and she's like, yeah, you're the first Black person he's ever seen. And he thinks you're beautiful. And I was like, this is wild. This is wild. And, we hug each other again and we're spinning around and we're joking and laughing and smiling. And I imagine this guy going home to his family and they sit around the dinner table and they're like, what happened today? And he said he would say that, I met a Black person for the first time and we had a great moment. We shared a laugh. We hugged each other. It was a good moment. And I imagine with what was ever in the media, any propaganda that may be out there saying people who look like me are this way or that way, he could say, no. I've met someone. I've met an African-American. They're like, they're great. And so I believe that what I learned in that moment is that we can all be ambassadors for peace anywhere we go, even if it's across the street or in a city that's nearby. We don't have to go all the way to the Netherlands. But when we show ourselves to be peaceful people, we're ambassadors. And in that moment, we bridge the gap of understanding, even though we didn't speak the same language. And those who are fortunate to be able to travel, right? If you have the funds to be able to travel, we should refrain from just not going to the beach or going to the nice restaurant. We should do those things, but not only do that, but to learn and to get to know someone who's from there. And I feel like that's how we can gain peaceful progress and to diminish the stigmas and the things that are false about where people come from. I call it education and exposure. So when you go someplace new, educate yourself on where you're going, learn a little bit about the culture of that area, and then please expose yourself to the people. Get to know somebody, make a friend. Yeah.
Thank you.
I have a question and I'm not sure exactly how to put it, but one thing we're working on in FOR is doing more work with and support of young people. FOR is an aging organization and we have tried asking people to join us, and that's had some mixed results. And so we have a program, the Mike Yarrow Peace Fellows, where we do training and a stipend for people, for young people to do a project. And this is something that we've got a big response this year, and it's looking pretty positive. But do you have anything to say about trying to reach our age group we're working with is age 14 to 24, the young people who are just examining their what they're going to do next. And from some stories you've told before, you've talked to some young people like that, of that age group. Do you have any ideas of how we can break the age barrier and make connections with them? I mean, we're doing things, but we're looking for more.
Yeah, that's a great question. So to answer your question, I would follow it up with this. My work, I wouldn't even call myself an activist. I call myself a peace campaigner. So what I do as a peace campaigner is to take peace and to campaign it as if it were Coca-Cola itself. Coca-Cola is literally everywhere. It's on TV, it's in the magazines, it's on the poster, it's everywhere. And it's just a sugary drink, right? So the idea with peace is, how do we make it trending, right? And to do that, you make it fun. You make it fun. It doesn't, it is very serious, and it's the most important work. But if we put it in a way that is appealing for youth, whether that could be music, right? Singing songs, they could be, having a podcast or a talk show. Or at one point, I was doing a children's program with puppets. I'm not big on puppets, but the kids like the puppets, so we were doing puppets. It's being flexible in the creative aspect of how we promote peace. And I would say that would be my advice, to be very flexible on the creative side. It could be funny too. You can have some comedy in there. I think maybe doing videos, funny videos, talking about something that's peaceful with a peaceful message could be really appealing for youth. Yeah, something along those lines.
Mhm. I was really interested that you went to Norway because I immigrated from Norway when I was a child, and I listened a little bit to Maryland's talk about the things, and I could relate to that because in 2008 my husband and I, we went back to Norway, and and then you were in the 17th of May parade, and I thought that was really cool. And so can you tell me a little bit more about how it was in Norway?
Yeah, it was very cold.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were actually from Norway. That's really cool. Yeah, it was very cold. I bought a pea coat thinking that would suffice. It did not. It did not. I got there and I was severely cold. So we went to basically like the equivalent of their Goodwill over there. And we got some nice, thick Norwegian coats. I love my coat. I still wear it today when it's cold outside. I got to meet some very prestigious leaders. I got to meet the former Prime Minister of Norway, Bondevik, and sit down with him and have conversations about what I'm doing here for peace and learn about what he did and is continuing to do in the Horn of Africa, trying to promote democracy. Beautiful work. Very, very eloquent speaker, very calm too and hospitable. Before I could even get a word out of my mouth, he's like, "Do you want tea?" I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then we were able to go to PRIO, the Peace Research Institute there, in Oslo, the biggest private peace research institute in the world, and sit down with the director, Heinrich, and talk with him about what we're doing here for peace, and to learn about the aspect of research in nonviolence, which is something that I wasn't even aware of, and to get sort of the academic ideas regarding peace and research. And he said, I asked him, I was like, "Hey, I'd love to come back and speak." He said he would love to have me. So I don't know, maybe someday I'll be going back to Oslo to meet with him again. What else? Yeah. Sort of speaking to the atmosphere of Oslo, it was very safe. Out of anything that I could explain about the city, it felt like unreal being, from the States. You look over your shoulder a little bit, when you're walking through a major city. And I never felt that since when I was there. There would be, women out late, 4 a.m., not a care in the world. There'd be people out walking the streets late, and there was not like a sense of having to protect yourself. I only saw one police officer the entire time I was there. I feel that there's this overarching culture of being safe that I felt there, which coincides with peace, of course. Yeah, food was great. Met a lot of cool people. Trying to think of what else. Oslo. This is a beautiful, beautiful area, beautiful place. People kind of keep to themselves as well. If you spark a conversation, then they'll talk to you, but they kind of keep to themselves in general.
Yeah. And when you went back and you made your speech in New York, right?
That was like culture shock, and the reverse culture shock. So I'm coming from an area, it's very peaceful, right? And I get to New York, and we're in the subway, and I hear over the intercom a woman screaming for her life and gunshots over the intercom, calling for police. And I see police officers rushing and running to go help her. And I'm like, this is so wild, so wild. But yes, the speech went well. I gave my speech at First Avenue Church in Manhattan. I've given a speech there once before when I was going to New York with the Manifest Humanity campaign. Very great church, very small congregation, which is pretty cool, Yeah, and it went very well. Just talking about my ideas of being in Norway and attending the Nobel Peace Prize, in contrast to what I had been witnessing in New York City, and asking, what can we do to show a little bit more peace from the individual to the next? So what can we do as individuals to show more peace in the world we live in today, versus relying on someone else to do it?
Mm-hmm.
More questions?
Yeah, keep them coming. I love them. They're great.
Something that occurs to me that's pretty simple to do is to cultivate. Cultivate is the wrong verb. Is to, when we're out in public, smile at other people rather than staring down at the concrete. Make eye contact with other people and maybe even say hello to them. It ain't so hard, and it can make things easier for other people, it seems to me.
I can agree more. It's very, yes, we deem it as being really difficult, but it can be easy. The more you do it, the easier it gets. I think about the idea of love being always the right choice. So you think about someone you haven't called in a long time, like a family friend or a relative, and how you can easily, we all have phones. They're all right on our hip. We can just pull it out and call our uncle or our friend who we haven't talked to in years, and just tell them how much we appreciate them, and how when we do those small things, it could literally make someone's year. Literally make someone's year to hear that, right? It's always the right choice. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and then another thing, we never know what people are going through, right? So it could be someone who may be experiencing a bout of depression and maybe thinking no one cares about them. And then when you call them to reach out to them, that just sparks a whole new trajectory for their psyche and what they're, so small things are big things.
Kwabi, I have a question. You obviously are a very positive person, and that's commendable to me. Are there things that bring you down as you try to do this work? I mean, are there frustrations or whatever that really challenge your, willingness to keep going?
Yes, thank you for that question. Yeah, yes. From how would I phrase this? I can only explain it this way. So being in the limelight and being known for doing peaceful work, you get pushback, and it's usually racial slurs or something like that in my inbox, or stuff like that. Honestly, I feel like some people are just bored, so they're just doing something throughout the day just to pass the time. But I think of it this way: if I wasn't receiving things like that, then I would be worried. The fact that progress is happening, I expect pushback. I expect it. There's never been any progress that has been done in this country or the next that hasn't had a pushback, if it was actually for good, doing something positive. But then there's also the sense that the optimism comes from human progress, right? So at one point in the United States, for example, in the early 1900s, kids weren't required to go to school. If you had money, your kid went to school. If you didn't, your kid didn't go to school. At some point, we came to the overall consensus that it would make sense that every kid should go to school. And I think that was peaceful, right? And now we're at the next stage where it makes sense that every kid should have quality education. But I think never in humankind has there been a better time to live than now. With all the atrocities, all the pains, all the craziness going on, I would rather be alive now than any time in human history. I think that speaks for something.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Definitely.
So, I have the problem that when I was growing up, and it seems like maybe 20, 30 years ago, things were better. I mean, I think it's going a little bit backwards. I know it's probably the best thing, but I get discouraged when a lot of things we worked for are now coming back. Like they're segregating the schools again. They're talking about, I don't know, and it worries me. Can you give me some good things to say?
Yeah. I hear what you're saying as far as things going back. I don't think they're as bad as they were 30 years ago. But I can see that there is still pushback coming. What I would say is this: in the span of human progress, it kind of goes like this. I feel like it goes like this. It goes, right? So you get spurts. When we're talking about human progress, we get spurts of time where it kind of goes down. There's a dip down, then it goes up, then it goes down, then it goes up some more, then it goes down again. I think that we're just seeing small bubbles of going back. But I think holistically, we're in an upwards trajectory. I really think so. And I think that just comes through knowledge and understanding. Now, the only way I could see that if progress could be dampened is if we turn a blind eye to truth, and the truth becomes ambiguous. I think that's when we get in a very difficult situation. There's, AI coming out where people you can have AI where there's sort of artificial intelligence where someone will be speaking and it's not actually that person, and it's hard to tell whether or not it's a real person or not. That concerns me. Other than that, I would say, you know, as long as we're trying to seek truth, we'll eventually get there towards a more peaceful world. And I mean, looking at the grand scale of things, you know, if we were living in the medieval age, I wouldn't want to live there. You know, it wouldn't be too good for me. It wouldn't be too good for a lot of us. You know, there are a lot of inventions and what's the word I'm looking for? Innovations that have transcended humanity to a higher height. I think that the best thing we can do in order to gain more of this is ensure that everyone has a seat at the table of opportunity to add on to the fabric of human progress, right? The more minds we have geared towards progress, the faster we will get to a more peaceful world, right? But when we hinder folks from being able to reach their true potential, then we become stagnant, and you know, more and more pain is caused throughout that don't let us get to where we need to be.
Mhm. I have another question is, can you tell us a little bit about your life? Like you grew up in Tacoma, or
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I grew up in University Place, Washington. Yeah, it was a nice childhood. I lived kind of in like a woodsy area, so I was always playing in the woods by myself, just running around, you know, as a kid. I have good memories. I had some good friends when I was young. And yeah, I went to Western Washington University for 2 years up in Bellingham. And then I came back to Tacoma and went to TCC for a little bit. And then I went to the Evergreen State College Tacoma campus. That's where I got my undergrad. And then I took about 2 years off. I wasn't meaning to take 2 years off, but I was applying for the MPA program, the Master's in Public Administration at the Evergreen State College Olympia. And I didn't get in. 2 years in a row, didn't get in. So in the third year, I was going to apply, but I was like, maybe public administration isn't right for me. So I applied to City University of Seattle for their business program, and I got in. And that's how I got my master's in business. And then, yeah, I've lived in Tacoma since then. I might be thinking about moving to Seattle in the next couple of years to expand my work. I have a vision of something, for example, like Every Kid Eats, that campaign, of being on a regional platform. So what if Every Kid Eats could be, yes, a summer program, but for Seattle, for Tacoma, and Olympia? What if kids could eat for free in Washington State in the summer? That would be incredible. And the plan is to not have government involvement. The plan is just for the people to do it all together, to work together to get it done. And I think it's possible. I really think. I think through legwork, it could actually be a reality. And I mean, it would be wonderful. It could be like if we could have kids eat for free all year. It's doable. We have the infrastructure to do it, but we'll see how it goes. Trying to think of anything else. Yeah, looking forward to the summer and filming this next episode and the Every Kid Eats campaign. And I might, we'll see, but I might be dressing up like Santa Claus again for this year. We'll see.
Okay, so I used to live across the street from Evergreen at Tacoma. I didn't see you, but I had some friends that went there. But and now I'm on the east side, so can you come to the East Side Community Center again? As Santa Claus?
Oh yeah, I did do that. Wow. Yes, I would. Wow. Yeah, I did do that.
Yeah.
I could do that. Yeah, I would like to do that. I
Okay,
forgot going to the East Side Community Center. I was Santa Claus for them about 2 years ago. Yeah.
yeah. I remember we didn't get down there, but we're not young people, my husband and I. We're kind of at the
Gotcha.
end of our life, but I have a son that's older than you are. We can still come see you, right? We don't have to be kids.
No, you don't. Not at all.
Okay.
I would love that.
Well, I think this is it. It's 7:59. We said till 8. But anybody else wants to say anything? We're happy to hear from you.
Well, thank you very much for this very inspiring account. I went and took a look at your YouTube channel as well as your website. There's a lot of great material there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
just
you. Thank you.
search for him and you'll find lots of good things.
Thank you guys for having me. This was brilliant. I appreciate each and every one of you. And thank you for being advocates for peace. I don't think there's any more important work in the world. So thank you for doing the work.
Thank you
Thank you.
for your work too.
And thank you for, yeah,